Welcome to episode 32. Check out what we have in store for you this week. Josh, I do have the bullets out of order, right? I'm going to go last to first here.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Exactly.
Don't worry, I got you.
Thanks, bro. You just have to find what would motivate adults, what would motivate young adults, right? That's the only thing you have to change.
One of the things you point to, we're not necessarily pointing to a specific app, but pointing to the idea of, can you use video games in your education experience?
Okay, this time it's a little more planned than last time. We were in the middle of an episode last week, and I just turned to Josh, right, and said, we need to cut this. We need a part 2. And so here we are, back for part 2.
That's how we do our planning. Basically, in the middle of the episode, we're just like,
maybe
part
we should
2.
do something else.
Yeah, maybe we should keep topics going or something,
Weird. We are the High Tech Podcast. This is Will and Josh, as always. Looking forward to continuing the conversation on gamification this week. Of course, you've got the usual things like a fun question, etc. to come, but we're pretty stoked. I love this topic. You know what I mean? It's something I love doing, game and stuff like that, and I love education. So clearly,
exactly.
Bring them together.
We're nerds, we're adults who still play video games, which is luckily more common now. So we're, not quite as weird as we were.
Yeah.
I like, it's fun when something that you like games can connect to education,
Yep.
in a meaningful way. So it's a good conversation.
But before we move forwards, let's take it back, right? So the fun question of the week is, what was the first video game you remember playing? Do you have it on lock? I thought it through. I think I've got it.
I think I do, but I want you to answer the question first because I just read the question like 10 minutes ago, so I'm trying to think through what I got here.
This is how we plan, folks. So my first video game I remember playing in my basement, very dingy basement, not a finished basement. It was on a tube television. There were all the knobs, and you could take them out and crap, and it was wonderfully retro. That's what you might say today. There's probably people who buy that TV now at a secondhand store for $400. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. It's like record players. It gives a better video.
We threw ours out, and people would pay like premium to buy that TV.
Yeah.
It was the NES, Nintendo Entertainment Center, and it was Super Mario Brothers. I mean, like, straight up, first style of that is what I remember playing as a kid and sucking at it so bad I could not get through the levels. I liked the challenge of trying to like jump on toads and bridge gaps, but I'd watch my brother play and he would like nail it, and I'd be like, what the heck? He was 8 years older than me, so that was a little easier. But that one's the first one I remember playing. And then like my first like favorite video game would definitely have been James Bond GoldenEye, an N64.
Ooh,
I crushed.
That's a good one.
I
haven't played that one in a while. Yeah, that was a good game. I remember playing that a good bit with the one little joystick you got on the N64 that made very little sense.
The weirdest controller.
But we totally did it. It was totally great. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, right? So I got a couple different memories of like early video games. I don't think I'm making this up in my head. I think this is a real experience that I had. But I don't remember what console it was. Might have been NES. Or it might have been Sega. I don't remember. There was like a stick like cowboy game. They were like stick figures, and you had like little guns. You had to like shoot away a wall, if I remember correctly. I think that was like one of the early games I remember playing, but I don't remember the name of it. I just remember playing it with my dad, so I don't really know. The like earliest games that I can remember like names and like enjoying was like when I had the Super Nintendo. And I played like Donkey Kong Country.
Yep.
And there was some like weird vampire or warlock game I played on there. I remember playing.
Castlevania?
It was like maybe I don't know. Okay. That and like Street Fighter. I remember playing Street Fighter on Super Nintendo. I was a big Street Fighter fan. I feel like those are some of like the early games I remember playing.
Yeah.
In my lifetime.
Yeah.
I didn't really get into video games until like later in life. I feel like it wasn't like I sort of played those. I liked those, and then I've played, as you and I have talked on many occasions, how I was never allowed to buy a memory card for the PlayStation 1. And I played some games there, and I feel like I got like burnt out on that, so I just never played video games until much later.
What he skipped over, but was implicit in what he said, is since he didn't have the memory card, he had to play it over and over and over.
Oh yeah, guys. I got
From the
really
start.
good at the first 3 levels of Spyro, the first 3 levels of the PlayStation 1 Phantom Menace game.
Oh yeah.
And like I only ever got to the Gungans. I never got to the good parts. You know, I was really good at getting to the Gungan city, and then I never got to anything
Sounds
after
like
that.
purgatory, frankly.
It was not great. I'm gonna be honest. It was not the most ideal ever. That's for sure. And like I think first couple levels of Mega Man. I remember playing Mega Man,
Wow.
and I was pretty good at that. Yeah.
Kids these days don't even know what a memory card is. Like I
know. They're like, what is that?
That's
I
a
just save
legitimate
on
thing to
things.
say, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm not
I
even
had like
being funny.
multiple memory cards for the PlayStation 2. I remember having to have like
You had
a
a
little
little
container
wallet.
of them.
Yeah, a memory card wallet.
Yeah, you like stuck them in there, and you had to like to remember which one. You know, you'd put like tape on them.
You hoped
and write down what you saved on which one, so you could remember, and then you like plug it in.
You hoped
yeah.
that when you got some allowance and you went to the store that you could buy a different colored one, right? Or that they had different
Oh
colored
yeah,
ones
one of
in
the
stock.
see-through ones.
But if you
Yeah.
didn't have the allowance, and if they had black in stock that week, like you just had the same memory card sitting next to you. Sit there like
Yeah,
sticking them all in
exactly.
your thing until you could find which
Yeah.
one had your save game on it.
This is taking us down memory lane, but just for a second, do you remember? So you were an Xbox guy, right? So you weren't really PlayStation.
I had a PlayStation 2.
Alright. Okay. Do you remember the thing that you had to plug it, like the little box you had to plug into it to be able to play with 4 players?
Oh yeah.
Because it didn't have enough. It didn't have, what was it called, like a multi-tap or something?
Yep.
It was like
Yep.
it didn't have enough plugs. Like Xbox was like, we'll allow 4 people, and PlayStation was like, nobody wants to do that.
Right.
And then they were like, oh, you do? Okay, well, here's a mini PlayStation box that you can plug in that allows you to play 4 players.
And it looked just like the PlayStation. It was like
It did. It would
they
look like a little
designed it.
version of the PlayStation 2, and you just like plugged it in,
Oh, the
and you could put
multi-tap.
4 people into it. Yeah.
My gosh, it's amazing how that technology develops, and like even today, you're right there, right? Like PlayStation said, no, we think that at most our user base would want to use 2 at the same time. Like I can't imagine, we're not going to.
Or they wanted to make money off of a multi-tap.
That sounds like something Apple would do, so it makes sense. But hashtag not a sponsor. But when it came to Xbox, they said, "Oh, we want to have 4." That's great. They launched with 4, and now today, almost all of the consoles are like, we want one person to play on each console. They're designing
Yeah.
them to be played alone from home with people online, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's kind of rough because I liked the split screen experience. It brought people together. You couldn't screen peek. There's so much that was involved in that I think made it a more social
Will,
experience.
you do know the new consoles do allow you to connect 4 controllers, though. You're like,
Well, it's all wireless
you're
now, so it's just
you're
easier,
aware of
but-
that, right?
yeah,
Okay, I'm just making sure.
But like there's not even as many games that are built to play co-op or like split screen co-op, that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Oh no, that's
it's just
definitely
like
true.
I think it's just a change in the gaming genre, and of course it makes them more money.
Yeah, exactly. On that note,
Yeah. Besides money and economics, right? Last time in this 2-parter experience, we dug into a lot more of the theory, and I think we spoke to some of the motivation that's in gaming and maybe why Josh and I are interested in this, of course. But we had like another 3 or 4 examples even before we finished that episode of like things we wanted to get into. So this week, definitely want to start out with a couple of practical elements, like just the ideas of what you might want to include in your classroom, online or physical. And then give some examples. So, Josh, I do have the bullets out of order, right? I'm going to go last to first here, but
yeah, that makes total sense.
exactly.
Don't worry, I got you.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, look at that. Look how crazy that is. Look what I did.
So
Like
there's,
reordered some things.
I don't think that there's necessarily the all-inclusive list of everything you must have in a game that you would want to have in a classroom, or
No,
like,
there totally is.
there's tons of elements to all these things.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give a couple of the tops that came to mind and that I think are useful. Like when a lot of people think of gamification, they think about what they could do to their class. I think we said this last time, but like, oh my gosh, it's too much. That's the reaction. I can't gamify my class. I'd have to do everything. Well, I want to give you some of these concepts. So maybe you could think about applying one or more of them to your class without having to recreate the entire class. So right up front, right? We know this from Monopoly, we know this from life, but everything's got rules. And if you can consider putting rules into your classroom experience, that can be really helpful in helping the students engage with each other, helping them engage with your classroom. And frankly, we already have those rules, right? But like usually they're considered syllabus policies, right? I think there's something to language. Like if you can change it, like here's our game rules, here's how we're going to play this semester together. You don't have to be that, play like language, but that can be really helpful. Because like one of the games that I even like playing with friends, it's a card game. Literally the rules of the game are like very simple. You pass a card, you pick up a card and pass one to your left or something. But there's secret rules that only the cow knows about, and everybody has to play against those rules. And the cow has like ultimate power and can get people out of the game pretty easily. But
as is with life,
the rules element is what makes it crazy, and suddenly the players are all trying to figure out what the rule is that the cow's playing against, and that can be tricky, but is a really easy thing to bring into your classroom. Like every class, here's a rule: every class you must ask a question. There you go. I mean, it could be as simple as that. You can then go on further and say every class you must ask one personal question of someone, like, hey, why do you think that? Or what makes you come to that conclusion or something? Or you have to ask a very like content specific question, like, what is the chemical makeup of hydrogen? I don't know. Right. But like that kind of rule is just easy. You're starting to gamify the class by saying, students, every class we do something, you have to bring something to the table. You have to engage a certain way. That's gamification. It's one little piece. In video games, there's tons of rules. There's physics rules, there's points rules, there's armor rules, but you can just kind of find some of those easy things to do, right? The other one, though, and this is already in your courses, but again, I think there's just an opportunity to kind of pivot it a little bit, make it more game-ish. Objectives, a goal, right? We all have learning outcomes. We all have something we have to write down what the course is supposed to accomplish. But if you can make objectives up there, awesome. By the end of week 1, I want you to accomplish what? By the end of week 2, you should accomplish what? But if you really don't want to make it that, classical student outcomes are like verb, what did the student do, all that crap. You can make these more quest-like. Like by the end of week 1, you will have explored the entire first chapter and understood, the impact it has on society, whatever. It's a simple language change, but then if you put new rules with new objectives and you put all of those through the course, it starts to build maybe a narrative or a theme, and you don't even have to, you still haven't talked about points, you haven't talked about any of the other crazy stuff, and you've begun gamifying your course. I am realizing if I go into this much detail on all these, we'll be here forever, so I'll wrap the list up, right? So rules, objectives, feedback loops. There's got to be a time for them to try something and get your feedback. This is already academic, right? But this is in video games. Opportunities to try and try again. What Josh said about the memory card is what we're talking about, right? You can save your game, and if you fail a boss, try again, and fail a boss, and try again. He didn't have a memory card, and he was just stuck in an endless loop of purgatory.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great example. That was frustrating. I only made it so far because I kept having to do the same stuff over and over and over again. And so that sounds like I'm saying, well, why would I want to have them trying again and do stuff? Like the point of saving a video game is that it remembers where I'm at. So if I fail, I don't have to start the whole way back from the beginning.
Right.
I can start from a certain section. And in your course, right, you want to give them places to try again, because the reality is you don't want them to get to the end of the course, fail, and then all of a sudden they have to do the whole thing over again, or go through all the stuff again. You want places for them, safety nets for them almost, to be able to engage with the content, learn it, retain it, practice it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways that applies, that trying again really fits into that. Now, just a reference, because we have time. Let's talk about this for a second. I want to go back to your feedback loop thing for a second.
Cool.
Because one of the other reasons I think Will's talking about feedback loops, Let's just keep tying back the stuff you're talking about to our real video game life. Okay. So,
Yeah.
In video games, okay, let's put it this way. So, we've played games before where you have to like do something or do a puzzle or you're trying to create something. And maybe I do it the first couple times and it doesn't really tell me what's going wrong. But I love the video games that kind of passively aggressively tell you that you're not doing it right eventually. Like you do it wrong. Like I had this game where like I was trying to find where I was going in the game and I kept doing the wrong thing to like beat this boss. And after 3 times, the game started giving me like suggestions like, hey, remember, there are weak points here. Or, hey, remember, there's this. And it was in a way a feedback loop. Like it was giving me feedback on what I was doing, which was essentially like, you're an idiot. There's stuff you need to be doing over here and you're not doing it.
Right.
Start doing it that way. Now, it doesn't apply that way in education perfectly, but in education, you want to have those feedback loops. So students are working on things and getting feedback continually throughout the course so that they can make course corrections. They can figure out what they need to do and do it better so that they're not, again, I think a lot of with gamification is they think, let's just give people badges and achievements. And while that's what we're going to talk about in a second, a lot of it is more of just like setting up structures that engage them and also help them along the way, kind of take the training wheels off, so to speak, as you're going. That is something that games do incredibly well. And part of the reason people get so into them is because they put people into an experience and they help guide that person through that experience in a very kind of careful way. People don't even notice when they're going through
a
it.
direct example of this for me, just a couple weeks ago, Josh and I have been playing a game since about when we started the podcast, right? And we're getting to end game, so it's getting easier in a sense, but it's a lot of grind. You gotta do a lot of stuff to get the last few things done. Months. We've been playing this game for months, and just 2 weeks ago, like a little pop-up hint showed up while I was doing something that said, when you get frozen by this thing, if you hit melee, it'll break you out.
Oh, yeah!
And I was like...
I got that too!
I was like, I've been playing this game for months, and every time I get frozen by blah, blah, blah enemy, I just sit there and wait the 3 seconds, you know what I mean? And here that pop-up shows up, it's like, hit melee, and it'll let you out. And I hit melee, and I rolled out, and I was like, oh... Now it all makes more sense. I've been playing this game for months and have just been suffering the consequences of freeze, right? And I could have done something about it. And that feedback loop has changed my gameplay. Now I can fight so much better when dealing with these things.
Well, and a good example of this in the class example then would be like, how many times have students been left on their own to try to like, how many math class have I taken and I'm doing these math problems and I'm doing something wrong the entire way and I didn't know because I did 50 problems and then got feedback 2 weeks later from the instructor. It's like, well, you did this wrong. And then I got this massive, bad grade on that thing. And these are real life experiences I've had. And it's like, well, you made me do these 50 problems and I never, no one told me I was doing it wrong. I've been doing it wrong for 50 problems. If I'd known that at problem 2, maybe I could. And that's where we're talking about in a gamification experience. You can create that type of feedback loop. You can create that try again experience. Like there's ways to make it fun, and there's other ways just to like implement that principle. In a way, you're doing gamification. Now there's good educational terminology for some of those examples, but in a way, you're doing some gamification. Now, I think we should probably talk about the next thing on your list, which I tend to bust on more than not, which is achievements. So maybe talk through what you're thinking.
The first thing that I want to get to on this is like before we get to the bashing, because I am all for it, right? I remember the first time I don't remember exactly the exact achievement, but I remember the feeling, right? First time I was playing a video game on the Xbox 360 on the Xbox, because that's where it was introduced to me. I don't think any system had it before this in a uniform way. I did something. Let's just say I got a quad kill, right? I killed 4 enemies in a row under 3 seconds. It must have been
Halo, folks.
It must have been Halo, right? And I did it. I was like, oh my gosh, I just did that, and then ding, something popped up in the bottom middle of my screen, opened up on screen and said quad kill, and gave me a cool little badge icon and something. And I was just like, oh dang! Not only did I just do that, but now everybody knows I just did that. For me, that meant something because I loved playing that game and I was trying to get good. And I felt like getting that quad kill was an example of improving my skill, right? So please hear that I was already motivated I was already intrinsically engaged with what was happening before I even got the achievement. I would have been excited just accomplishing the quad kill. And then I got the achievement, which reinforced the excitement. That is not true for every person who plays games or takes your course. And that is, to me, the first point where achievements fall apart. They are great motivators for people who like getting a little attaboy, who like getting a gold star. But if you're not engaged in that, it's just a piece of paper, or it's not. It doesn't even exist. In most cases, it's just a virtual little icon or something like that.
Yeah. Now let me break something down for you, because here's my where I want to break down your experience and why I think there are ways you can use it effective. Because I bash on the thing we're bashing on, if you don't know, is badges. Mostly is where this comes up. Like people, one of the things that happen at a gamification, I think, is a lot of people were like, badges, like badge things.
Clearly, that works.
That works. That's how we're going to motivate them. And it didn't seem to work. Yeah. Like people weren't getting motivated. Now, here's why I think. You made a subtle comment there, which is that you liked this game, cared about this game, and the achievement gave a name to something that you were doing in the game. Right? Okay. And so where I think we failed with badging is that people will try to badge just like for random things, or like, an attaboy on a discussion, like you did, you posted, good job.
Here's a
gold
badge
star
for posting 3 weeks in a row. I didn't want to. I was required
to.
to.
Yeah, we're required to. And we laugh about this, but achievements are already built into education. That's what grades are, like in a certain extent. But here's where I think we can leverage the achievement idea in gamification better. Use badging or achievements to give names to kind of these what's the word I'm looking for? The word's not in my head right now. But kind of untangible things in a course that achieve. So good examples would be like setting up badges for like if people apply certain principles well in papers, or there's a concept that they end up applying out well. I'm not expressing this well because the idea is really just kind of coming to me as I'm talking about it, but kind of this idea of taking the intangible and using badging to give kind of a tangible achievement, making it clear that progression is happening.
Well, and I like that
and that's where I think it's different.
I like that you went with paper, and I think there's a good way to like distinguish it with a paper, right? A lot of people might look at a paper and what they could give students achievements on for that and be like, okay, if you met the page limit, if you cited all your citations correctly, like those are very checklisty and quantifiable things. Like that's really easy to be like, oh, that's a badge.
Unquantifiable. There we go.
And I think I think that what you just actually pointed out would be better to say, successfully used a thesis statement that engaged me, or used an effective hook, right? Like something like that is actually much more relevant to the writing of the paper than met the page limit, or met the citation limit, or you cited everything correctly. Like, I'd rather see a badge on papers be about, effectively integrated a point from paragraph 2 or whatever, an early paragraph, into a paragraph made at a later time in the paper. That would be a skillful application of
obviously
writing.
Shorten it for your badge. But no, like another example would be like, I don't know, you're teaching English and you have methods of rhetoric in argumentative papers, right? So like how could you give a badge to this? And this is where you were I think something you just helped me with. You said quantifiable. Really where I think badges and achievements, like making these up, are helpful, is giving a name to the unquantifiable, the stuff that's hard to quantify. Right? So like student uses this type of rhetoric really well. There's create a badge or an achievement for that type of rhetoric, so that it gives kind of a tangible example of you achieved something, you progressed in something, and you gave a name to something that you did, and in that can help motivate, it can help encourage students, and it's just like even that small encouragement can help them do better later on in the course, or persevere through other things in the course. And that's where I think achievement can actually help, when it's not just when it's tying the achievement or the motivating progression to actual success in the project or thing that they're working on or in the course, when it's tying it not just to checklisty items or to you submitted your paper or you posted or they're too vague where they're just like you had a good idea. Okay, what does that mean?
Right.
It's when you tie
So if I got a good idea
something.
now, do I need to do a better idea later?
Yeah. The idea is you need to take the untangible, make it more tangible with the achievement, and that helps give a name to the progression and success that the student is having. And I think at that point helps motivate and encourage the student, which encourages better learning ultimately in the course.
My last point to achievements would be another lesson learned from Halo, right? And this is actually going to play into the last element that we'll get to about choice, but if you played the game Halo, or if you play many modern games today, like you've got difficulty levels, easy, normal, hard. Halo used the final term that the most difficult was called legendary, right? That was the difficulty mode, legendary. I loved it. Well, if you played the game through on easy, you didn't get an achievement, right? Because it was as easy as it could possibly be. No achievement. You did it. Good job, right? I can play it too. It's like reading a book at that point. You put it on normal, and you completed the game and you got an achievement. Congratulations, you completed on normal. And then if you completed on heroic, you got an achievement for completing on. But if you from the get-go you started and ended the game on legendary, it would give you the achievements for normal and heroic as well, right? You never had to go and get the achievement for normal if you beat it on heroic. If you worked your way up, you could work your way up. But there was also that achievement, like if you were just that dang good, you could do the legendary from the get-go and get all the achievements in the middle. I'm not necessarily saying we need to make it like a cheat code slip through to like beat your course in a week kind of thing. That's not what I'm suggesting with this like legendary idea, but the leveling progression is something to be considered. If you're working in weeks 1 through 3 on introducing them to these topics of rhetoric, and they start introducing those in their papers, awesome. But if by the end of the semester they are introducing them well, you need to be considering like an early badge. Yes, you did it. Good job. You included that rhetorical device in your writing. But by the end of it, it needs to be you included it so well. You exceptionally included it. There's got to be space to like provide achievement for folks, and you can give those earlier on in the semester if people are doing that, right? But it's more likely in the beginning of a semester that the students are only just getting it in there, not doing it well or doing it exceptionally well, for instance. That's something I think that like achievements need some space for, because if you've got a student who gets in there in week 1 and all you're doing, the only thing you've got to give them is good job you included that rhetorical device, are they going to have to get 15 of those? This like every week they're just going to be looking to get the same good job you did that rhetorical device. You want to give them something that like they can get when they're not as good and that they can get once they get better.
Yeah, and I think to your point, like while I don't think it works in every course, there are ways to work through like what would it look like for a student who does really well on this assignment to move to a different assignment than a student who doesn't do as well. Like, right. What does it look like to try to have that type of progression? And your LMSs and stuff have a lot of things that can help you do this. Like Canvas, the one that we use, has a system like that. There's a mastery progression system you can implement in a course where if a student gets a certain grade or points on an assignment, Canvas will actually help divert them to different assignments depending on what happens.
Right.
And even sometimes bypass. And we use this in education already where we let people test out of things. But what would it look like to implement that at a smaller level in a course where, maybe a student who does really well in this assignment maybe can move on to a slightly harder activity or something. And there's and you don't have to make it obvious to the students you're doing this, because the students who go to the easier activities will be maybe unmotivated if they find out they're not doing great. Right. But if you do this right, it also helps maybe lift that student up who's struggling by not necessarily throwing them in the deep end right away.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like in higher ed that's looked down on doing it that way, because it's like, oh, they should figure it out. That's hand-holding the student. It's like, well, like some students are going to pick certain things up quicker. They're going to struggle with different topics in different ways. Like if we're really out there to help the student learn, like, why is it such a big deal to do something like that? So, and
if video games are such like a multi hundreds millions dollar, maybe $1 billion industry, and all they do is hand holding, like, what? I don't mean to belittle the issue, but it's like it's not the end of the world to help somebody through something. What? When did they become
And
a
at the
bad
end of the
thing?
day, they learn it. Like, people bash on video games, but there's a reason people get so pulled into video games, and they learn to do the things in them. Like, video games are masters of taking people into something they haven't done before, and showing them how to do it. And taking it off to the point where, like, by the end of the game, you feel like a monster. Like, you're just ridiculous at it. Like, and so that's not, that hard, I think, in that place. So, before we move on real quick to our kind of next segment in here, I do want to touch on a little bit of, like, the examples you had in here that I think can tie into. I'll touch on mine just real quick. I think a good example that I've seen with this is I really like simulation tools. And what I mean by that is not like virtual reality simulation. Like, there's a really simple way to do simulation in a lot of courses that I think people overlook. Now, you can do that through some cooler tools like H5P that we talked about in our episode a little while ago. But there's some other ways you can do what I'm about to say with, like, quizzing and stuff like that. So, and this gets into the choice that you're talking about, Will, a little bit, I think, is creating just simple, like, choice quiz type of things where students get to make decisions about things and reap the repercussions of them. So a good example of this would be, like, I've seen in a counseling situation where somebody set up a home visit simulation where, like, they came into this type of quiz situation. There were some images that they embedded, some video, but they would come into a situation where they would ask, like, you're coming into this home visit, you're going to be here, and then a question would pop up. Okay, what are you going to do in this type of situation? What would you say? Right? And so in a very basic quiz, you could set that up, but they kind of built the simulation where, like, they had a video that was showing the student, from first person, showing the person get into it. And it was just kind of cool. It was like, it got them to a moment where they had to make a decision like they would in a home visit. Quiz asked them, and they didn't lose points depending on their answer. It was just depending on their answer, it changed what happened next in the simulation. Right. And it changed which type of question they got next. And it's not that difficult to set this type of stuff up sometimes. And by doing it, you kind of create this cool experience for the student. And you simulate real life examples where they can apply what they're learning, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's kind of tricky about that for some folks is imagining what it would be to do that, right? Like, how am I gonna what do I need to do, Josh, to, like, make that kind of simulation? A quiz. Most quiz tools are going to be sufficient enough to get that done. A survey tool.
I was gonna say, if a quiz can't do it, you can probably find a survey tool that has logic choices in it.
Right.
That would be a way that you could do that. So, like, because some of your limitations of quizzes are going to be, do they have logic tools?
Google Forms,
or a way to do it
has that. So, like, if you're a Google school, or if you have your personal Google account, you can do these things in Google Forms.
Microsoft does as well. If you use Microsoft, but it would allow, like, logic choices where, like, if they answer, well, I would say this to my client, that it opens up a different question for them, right? Or maybe opens up another section of video. Like, in a form, you could embed some video, and that question takes them to that video, right? And depending on what they answer there, the way I could do it because I use Canvas, so in my environment, if I was going to do this through just my tools in Canvas, just a perfect example would be, there's a completion tracking system in Canvas. So I would probably set up that depending on the quiz answer they get a certain amount of points, and depending on that amount of points, the completion would open up the next piece of media or something like that they would go into and do. So there'd be a way for me to do that depending on what I wanted to do there. So it's basically just setting up a question, being able to set based on that answer, does it go here or here? And a form or an LMS could do that for you. It's just kind of thinking through those pieces. And I'm sure if you have somebody who knows that LMS at your institution, like, I don't know, an instructional technologist, they could probably help you figure that out.
Amazing. Well, and that is another example of how, like, gamification can be done cheap. Like, you don't have to make a game. It doesn't have to all become a game to make your course gamified, right? You could just add a simulation experience in. Boom. You've now added a gamification element. Now, I say that to tell you about one of the coolest things I've ever heard about, where an instructor, Beth Box, she is a K-12 instructor. She used to use, or at least she used, a Schoology, a learning management system that I used for quite some time. Josh used it before he, moved on with his life. I get it. It's fine. you know.
To better, bigger dreams.
Yeah, sure,
you know?
sure. But I was at a conference, and it was a Schoology conference. She was speaking on what she did in her classroom. And so she was wrestling with engagement. Students were not completing assignments, were not getting good grades on assignments, and she was really down about it. So with her district pulling on Schoology, she decided she was going to do something radical. She gamified her entire civics class. Everything was gamified. When the students came in and started day one, they picked an avatar. They got their username. They could see that there was this points system. There was a store that they could buy things from with their points. Like, she did everything. And every single page in the course was narrative content, right? So none of it read in 1985 blah 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 blah. It was like, so you're journeying down the path towards the year 1985 and you consider this option before you. Like, it was a game. The entire course was a game. She poured her heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into it, right? And she reported on 100% engagement that year when she did it. I mean, it's astounding what she got out of her effort. 100% engagement doesn't mean perfect grades, right? But
yeah,
from struggling to get barely any of her students to do anything in her class, she turned her class into a game. She met miraculous response from the students, and they really, really enjoyed it. She was at the time that she was speaking on it in the conference, I think she was doing it for her second or third year, right? So she not only did it 1 year, but then because she had built the curriculum, she could use it again and again. And it's just awesome, right? When you can put that much time into it, when you can do the entire course, there is an opportunity for a great return. But it is a K-12 context. She did put a whole summer's worth of work and probably more into it. She made little icons. She made, names for everything, right? And she taught civics through a gamified course, the entire game.
Yeah.
Really cool.
But again, into that point, like, that's an extreme point where somebody went to that. But take even small elements of what she did. The narrative writing.
Yep.
Like, if you're going to start with something like, maybe it's like, okay, how can I engage a student better? Well, gamification principle will be like, well, maybe I don't just like write information for them. What if I actually wrote a narrative, a story that they were going through, and they got to, just role play a character that they were in that space. And you don't have to create a bunch of icons to do that.
Right.
You can just kind of write out stuff. So the point is like, there's elements I think that you can implement, or you can go extreme and do something incredibly awesome like that. And I want to take that course. So that's,
right.
There we go.
I would learn a lot about civics. And as one last anecdote on what she did, she wrote all this stuff herself. But then if she had a PDF or an article or something that was real that she wanted them to read, she would just be like, oh, and now you've found this artifact. Open the artifact to find out more about what you need to complete the quest in this week. You know what I mean? And like, the students would open a PDF and be pouring into it, trying to find the keywords and the da-da-da-da-da that she couldn't have paid them to open before she tried this style. And then as they did things, as they completed activities, quizzes, stuff, they got points, and those points let them buy stuff in the store that was like, they could change their username, right? If they set their username in week 1, it was set. But if you got enough points in week 3, you could change your username. You could be the one that stood up at the front of the class and said good morning when everybody came in. You could. There was like the most expensive one, I think, was that they could change her username, right? They had to like save up all their points and they could change her username in the game. So like, it was irrelevant. It had nothing to do with the learning at necessarily at that point. But for kids, that was one of those motivational elements that really got them involved. You just have to find what would motivate adults, what would motivate young adults, right? That's the only thing you have to change. You would probably still, if you did what Beth did, you would want a store. You would just put different things in there. Like, the most expensive thing should be two extra credit points, maybe, or another chance at submitting a paper, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of things that you could put into some similar context for a higher education course. Okay, round 2. In this next corner, Irv Spanish, a good friend, Glenn Irvin. He has been doing such awesome work for a long time to help his districts in Minnesota. I've known him now, I don't even know, like 8 years or something. It's crazy. But his one conference speech that I've seen him give is about Minecraft for Spanish, right? So he used Minecraft as a tool to teach students Spanish,
which is a video game, if you people do not know that.
Minecraft is very kind of silly. It's very simple. It's a block based game, so everything looks like cubes. Like it's almost like what do you mean? But he had them. I don't want to I don't want to overspeak, Glenn. If you listen, I'm so sorry if I butcher this, but like I did attend your speech twice.
It's okay, be angry at him.
It's
fine. You're allowed
your speech twice, so I think I've got some facts here, right? He would have the students like create worlds where everything that was in the world. I don't know if there's like a lot of writing or stuff, but if they had any words, it had to be written in Spanish in the world. And then what they would do is like to like talk to each other in it and talk to him in it. They had to like only describe the world they created in Spanish. And so they're just having fun. Here I am hitting my mic. It's not a podcast if I haven't hit my mic or forgotten something. Sorry, folks. He's having them build an entire world, just play the game and have fun, right? But then they're creating like little museums of artifacts that are from their lives, and then they have to be able to talk about those things. Like if it's a frisbee, because they play Ultimate Frisbee, they need to learn the language to talk about that, to be able to describe it in class. I mean, how much more personal can it be? That A, they're having fun just playing the game. B, the stuff that they're building into it and the world they're creating is their own. And then they get to like tell other people about it and share their story. The only stipulation, the rule, is they have to do it in Spanish. Now he's motivated them to participate and engage in a whole new level. I don't think he's teaching this anymore or more like frequently, but it was really successful for him for a couple of years. And Minecraft for Education exploded. Like tons of people use Minecraft in different ways.
Yeah.
That was just like his Spanish language teaching. And I thought it was so cool that he could get them involved like that. The last one for me, I got to play this while I was at my last institution, and it was really, really kind of scary, frankly. It was a Homeland Security level or like kind of RPG, like a simulation experience where you assigned each of your students a nation. They were given resources and economy. They were told which other nations they were friends with, which other nations they wanted to invade. There's like a terrorism element. Like there's this whole kind of almost risk level world, but it was a game. You get put into it, and the students had to play out a way that they could get to world peace, right? And so they had all these limitations on the game. Like, well, if Ghana doesn't like Nigeria and the Americas try and give Nigeria help, then Ghana's like of the United States is going to go down, right? So you can't the U.S. just can't give everything away to Nigeria because that's going to piss Ghana off. And they have to like become presidents and secretaries of states and all these different titles and work in a world together trying to like be the United Nations, try and bring peace to this. And I think there's eventually a pandemic. An epidemic hits, and you've got to like try and save lives while dealing with that.
Got too close to home.
Yeah. That took time. That took money. There's programmers involved. Like it's a big project, and it's actually out there. You could go find it and use it yourself. But those are examples, right? These things are anything from do it yourself, like Beth Box did, to using something that exists like Minecraft and Glenn, or using, or working with the team and a set of people to create something that's just unique to what you're trying to teach, like in that Homeland Security example. It's tough, but this is the age we're in, right? We're in a space where we need to find the things that reach people where they are, and we don't want to get caught in like the age of empires. Right, we're not stuck in the old days.
Not the. Did you know it's a video game?
We're here today.
Yeah, we're here today. But did you know it's a video game? Age of Empires.
Did I just transition?
Oh, you did.
Oh.
So our app today is a little weird. I gotta be honest. It's just video games. We're gonna pick one of the apps that we have on our massive list that mainly Will has created, but we decided one of the things we point to, we're not necessarily pointing to a specific app, but pointing to the idea of can you use video games in your education experience. So we've given one example of Minecraft. A ton of people use Minecraft for education, and obviously there are some very unique uses to that. Like it's not going to work for absolutely everybody, but encourage checking that out. One of the other examples I have of a similar component to what Will was talking about is actually known a guy who was talking that he used the game called Age of Empires. So it's like a strategy war game. It's probably how I would term it. You're like a nation and you're fighting people, and you're an empire. So
And they use
he
historical empires, like it's references all these different.
yeah, well, there's a bunch of different
years
versions of the game,
fair,
but
fair,
yeah,
fair, fair.
there's yes. But one of the big parts of the game is resource management. You have to like manage these resources because you're building buildings, you're all this stuff. So he actually used it in a kind of exactly that, trying to teach resource management in kind of like a budgeting class. It was trying to teach them how to manage a lot of different resources at once. And obviously they were teaching a bunch of other like budgeting math type of things, but they used Age of Empires in a way to kind of, as the course progressed, students had to use that game to basically learn how to kind of build up this empire, but it was teaching them how to do resource management. Like how do you keep track? How do you make sure you're going to have enough to do certain goals? Like he would set certain goals for them that they had to try to achieve in the game.
Yeah.
And so that was just a good example of, similar to Minecraft, using the game to kind of, I think the way video games can be used well is kind of, they're sometimes used in kind of a niche-y fashion where people are like, well, if I put a video game in my course, it'll really bring my students together. But the point is bringing like clear thought. Like, how does the game enhance the learning? Like Minecraft enhanced the learning because he needed them to learn how to describe Spanish. Like not describe Spanish, but describe things in Spanish. You need to learn how to speak in Spanish. And so what did he do? He tied it to actually creating something and them having to describe what they're creating and only being able to work together in this through Spanish. Age of Empires is used because there's a natural resource system set inside the game. And so he's trying to teach them how to do budgeting and resource management. So why not put them in a virtual experience where they actually have to manage resources? So like, again, tying it to a practical thing that they have to do or learn or get involved in. And so I think that's a good example. Now you have something written down here under the video game option that I don't know what the crap this is. So what is this last example that we could give recommendation for?
This is one that I just learned about. I haven't even played it, but I've watched some gameplay and it looks a little cute, but it also looks amazingly challenging. It's called Baba Is You. BABA. Baba is, like I am, is you. And it's a logic puzzle game. So when you land on the map, it's a little bit of a maze, right? It's every map is a different puzzle, and you have to get Baba to the tree or the exit or the flag. Like you have to get Baba out, right? But on the screen are actually words like Baba is you, Baba is key, Baba is tree, Baba is leaf, right? And there's only one word that says is. There's only one word that says Baba. So you've got Baba is, then you've got tree, leaf, key, door. And you've got to move stuff around the map and like follow the logic of what is something. Sometimes you have to turn Baba into a tree, and then you're no longer the Baba, but you're a tree, and the tree moves out to the exit, and you just get out. Like you've got other things that get involved. So there's like rocks and I don't know, like sand pits and obstacles, barriers that get in your way. There's doors that open, and so like you change everything you're doing. You kind of have to look at the puzzle. The first thing you want to do is like, oh, I'm just going to move Baba off the board. But you have to actually like consider the fact that the words or the rules, I am this, are a part of the game, and you can change the rules. And you have to change the rules to get Baba out sometimes. So yeah, the first map, you pretty much just walk Baba off, no problem. But then later on, you literally have to like turn Baba into a key, and then you have to change the fact that Baba is a key, that a key is a key, and it makes two keys, and then you get to kill one key, and you are the second key that gets out of the map. Like it's this weird, it's weird, dude, right?
What?
But it's logic. You can't just look at the map like there's the exit. How do I walk Baba through the exit? You have to think through, okay, I have a Baba, I have a key, I have an exit, I have a boulder. How do I use these things to get over the sand pit, climb the tree, and get out of the room? It's really challenging, and I think that that's something can help folks process through critical thinking skills. You could do it collaborative, so people have to do teamwork to help get out of the room. Like there's a lot of ways you could take that very simple game mechanic and just a logic game, not only make it fun but also make it academic or educationally challenging.
Okay. Well, that's a new one for me.
We're gonna have to like when we do like our high tech streaming channel, we're gonna have to like stream us playing Baba Is You or something.
Yeah, that seems like the natural progression of what just happened, for sure. Well, on that note, thank you again, guys. Join us another week in the High Tech Podcast, where we talk about the hard-hitting issues like video games and gamification and whatever else we talk about. But in all honesty, join us again as we talk about how we can enhance the classroom, whether virtual, physical, whatever we could do. And I think gamification has definitely a lot of principles that can help you engage your students, help them learn, help them wrestle with the content that you have. So we hope that this was helpful for you again this week. And